is, as I have said, is a cognitive disorder, whereby you find that it stems from how your brain processes or how your brain perceives the world around you.
Okay.
Yeah, so to pinpoint at the exact cause, I would be lying if I say that it is that specific thing
that causes it.
Certain methods of teaching. For example, you can do movement teaching, whereby you teach them as they move around, they'll still get it. But now the challenge comes in, you want them to sit and concentrate on, for example, maths. You can't do math when you are sugary. It triggers the release of dopamine, and in a child, you find that their digital autism is whereby the child acquires social anxieties, like they avoid social environments so that they can go to the screens, to the phones, tablets. Yeah, so you find that it affects their social aspect, because autism in the long run it affects the social aspect of the child with ADHD. In fact, I think everyone has mild ADHD.
Why do you say so?
Because how long can you concentrate on one thing?
It depends. It's interesting, then I think you can stay there for a while.
Yeah, but most of the time.
Hello beautiful people, and welcome to yet another amazing episode of Autism Lifestyle. Today I'm joined by an amazing gentleman, and we are going to be talking about ADHD, or in full attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. And I'll let him introduce himself so that we can start from there.
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Teacher Mugo. I'm a teacher at Mirema School in the special needs unit.
Okay.
Yes.
Karibu sana, Mugo. And as we start, maybe you can start by telling us how you joined this field of special needs education. Was it out of interest? Is it something you knew about?
So, particularly not out of interest, not something that I knew, but I would attribute this field to being around teachers. Yes. So my mom is a teacher. Yeah. So I think I drew inspiration from.
It was passed on. Okay.
Yes.
So from your experience being a teacher of these learners with special needs, especially those with autism, and those with also attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, so maybe you can start by telling us what first ADHD is.
So ADHD is, let me put it in very simple terms, is a cognitive disorder whereby you find that the level of concentration is highly affected, in that you can't focus on one activity for long. So yeah, in summary, that is what ADHD is supposed to be.
Okay. So it originates from the brain. It's all about the brain activity.
Yes, actually, yeah. It's a cognitive. It stems from the cognitive aspect.
Okay. And so, are there causes of it, or where does it originate from?
So ADHD is, as I have said, is a cognitive disorder, whereby you find that it stems from how your brain processes or how your brain perceives the world around you.
Okay.
Yeah. So to pinpoint at the exact cause, I would be lying if I say that it is that specific thing that
causes it. So is it something that can someone be born with it?
Well, yeah, you can be born with it, but at the same time, this thing with that the saying that goes, you are what you consume.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So you'll find that in this age that we are in, this thing we call the digital space. So the digital space affects children like very, very much. You'll find that Cocomelon is playing on the TV. Yeah. So the kid is so glued to the screen to the extent that they find it difficult. ADHD also goes in your ability to shift from one task to another. So imagine as a child, you have grown in a way that you are so glued to one thing that you find it impossible to shift to another activity. So yeah, it's as it's saying, attention deficit. So deficit can either be it's so low, and at the same time you can't shift in between tasks. So yeah, it's possible for a child to be born with it. And at the same time, it's also possible that they acquire it from the environment.
In what way, in terms of the environment?
The environment. Yeah, as I said, the digital space, actually, most of the time, it has more negatives than good.
So it's a good thing, because I think most parents out here believe that when the child is on the screen, they are okay. And you as the parent or the caregiver, you have a chance to do now something else because the child is already engaged.
Wow. So you realize the digital is doing more harm than good. Because there's also this condition that we call digital autism. I don't know if you've heard of that, but digital autism is whereby the child acquires social anxieties, like they avoid social environments so that they can go to the screens, to the phones, tablets. Yeah. So you find that it affects their social aspect, because autism in the long run it affects the social aspect of the child. So the digital that is TVs, phones, tablets,
all in one.
So I would say that for a child it does more harm than good.
Okay. And for you to identify a child and say that this child has, yes, they might be on the spectrum, but they also have the ADHD. What is now the difference between a child who has autism only and one with a combination of both?
So autism generally is defined as it's a situation whereby a child has a difficult time in any social environment. So yeah, you find that an autistic child will either avoid a social interaction. They will also have movements that are repeated. So in general, an autistic child might avoid a social or might feel they're not fitting in a social environment. So ADHD, on the other hand, you find that for a child with ADHD, they are everywhere. Number one, like they can be super excited. Number one, like they can't settle down. You get. So you might have a child who is having difficulties in concentration. Like, for example, if they're in church, they are all over. Like they can't just
settle down in one place.
Yes. So I think that the major difference is that aspect. But now you will find that in some cases you will have a child with autism at the same time with ADHD.
So you can have a combination of both.
Yes, you can have a combination of both.
So apart from this screen time, what other factors can maybe lead to the ADHD to escalate?
So to escalate, okay, we are assuming it's the triggers,
it's already there.
The things that can elevate
trigger.
it.
Yeah, it's already there.
Okay, so you find that a diet also. So there's wheat products, for example, they contain gluten. So you'll find that gluten has it works in a very strange way, gluten actually. So you'll find that it triggers a reaction in the brain whereby you release hormones such as dopamine, for example. So the dopamine is responsible for excitement, happiness. Like it makes you.
It's a happy hormone.
Yes, it's happy hormone.
Yeah.
So you'll find that consuming wheat, consuming things that are sugary, it triggers the release of dopamine, and in a child, you find that their self-regulation. They have the hormone, it's there. They have the ADHD, and now you have given them something that is sweet, something that triggers the release of dopamine. So yeah, you find that some foods, especially like the wheats, napata, pizza, chapo, anything that is made from wheat.
So it's increased double.
Like it kind of, look at it this way. You have taken something with a high levels of glucose.
Yeah.
So it also gives you the energy for,
because I think we call it, for us, we call it sugar rush when you eat something, then you're active. Yeah, so for these children.
To the child, is not a sugar rush. You just reinforced, you're like reinforcing a condition that is there. Because sugar rush, I think it's very short-lived.
Yeah, it's short-lived. Because you see, I think we can now relate it to that. Because for people, when you take sugar and then you're like, I have sugar rush. When you see the child jumping up and down, the parent is like, it's sugar rush.
No, most of the time, like you can find you're reinforcing
a condition that is already there. So what are some of the challenges that this child may face in terms of maybe even going to school? Are they even able to settle in class?
Actually, leave alone settling. Because settling, as a teacher, there's a way you can. It's not necessarily that the child is settled for learning to take place. Yeah, because you can use. There are certain methods of teaching. For example, you can do movement teaching, whereby you teach them as they move around. They'll still get it. But now the challenge comes in. You want them to sit and concentrate on, for example, maths. You can't do math when you are you can't use movement learning when teaching mathematics. So you find it affects the level of the length of time one can sit and concentrate. So imagine it's during an exam.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yes. So it becomes very difficult for them for a teacher to make an assessment that requires them to concentrate. So number two, you find that in class the movement or the restlessness, it affects their learners. Yeah, so it not necessarily affects only them, but also their classmates.
Because they are not distracting them.
Yes. So you find that learning becomes quite challenging unless they are in a separate class.
Okay. So when you talk about them being in a separate class, in my mind I'm thinking they are being secluded. And would you advise on them being integrated in one classroom with the other learners? Or would you advocate for them being in a separate classroom?
You have to understand we have integration and inclusion. You get those are two different things. So in inclusion, you have them in the same environment but in different classes. In integration, they are in the same class, same teacher and everything. Yes. So majorly the best thing from experience, I think the best thing is to have them in a separate class but in the same school environment.
Okay. So
whereby you'll find if it's time for break, they are going for break together. If it's time for play time, they are there together. But when it comes to classwork, they are in separate classes.
And so there is a time I had a guest here, and he mentioned when it comes to autism, we have levels where we have level 1, 2, and 3. So would you say it's the same case when it comes to also ADHD?
ADHD, there are levels actually, because you find that some have mild ADHD. In fact, I think everyone has mild ADHD.
Why do you say so?
Because how long can you concentrate on one
task.
thing?
It depends.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting, then I think you can stay there for a while.
Yeah, but most of the time you are very distracted. Like, okay, let me give you this example. For how long can you go without touching your phone?
In today's era, barely.
So yeah, that is an example of ADHD. You are easily distracted. You get your attention is easily
swayed away.
yes, swayed. Yeah, but anyway, that is I was digressing.
It's okay.
But anyway, you find that there's mild, there are severe cases whereby a learner can't settle. And if they settle, is for a very short time and then they are up again. And so yeah, it also has, it differs in severity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it the same for all of them in terms when you say one can be in one class with the other learners and another one should be secluded? So does it apply to all, or there are some who can be in one class with other learners and learn?
So depending on the level of severity.
Okay.
Because you have to understand that the learning methods, some of the teaching methods of different, those, okay, for the one in special classes, like the ones I have, you will find that these learners, they need what we call individualized educational plans.
Yeah.
You get, and it's very difficult to do that in a normal class in setting. So depending on how severe the case is, having them in their own class whereby you deal with the specific learner, because you will find that the teaching methodologies are different. So for example, in the regular class, a learner is supposed to sit down, take notes. In this other classroom, can you do that when your brain can't allow you to sit down and
it becomes a challenge?
yes, so being in a separate class, it helps the teacher to give a more attention to the learners.
Okay. And so what are some of these strategies that you take, or the measures that you take in order to make sure these learners are well catered for in terms of now their education?
So you can do something we call behavior analysis. Behavior analysis is whereby you track, like you keep record of, like for example in ADHD, you will take note on the type, the time. Actually, you take the time, type, and duration. Like for how long were they distracted before? So yeah, that is the most common. You track the behavior. You know, it can even, it allows you to know, is the child improving or is it becoming worse? So yeah, tracking the behavior is one of the strategies. Number two, you find that children are like empty slates. You know that theory. There's a theory that is the socio-cognitive. Yes, socio-cognitive theory. You find that in the social cognitive, we are told that the child learns from their parents, some of their caretakers.
From observation.
Through observation. So you can teach how to settle down. You can teach them. You can also allow that you tell them, yes, you are done now. That is another strategy of letting them know of their behavior. Like you let them know. You tell them you are standing, but I'm giving you for like 2 minutes. You sit for 3, and then you are going to stand after that. So you find that with the time, you will go reducing the time where they are distracted or they are standing. So you will go, today you started with 5 minutes, tomorrow 3. With time, you find that they can settle for even a whole lesson.
Yeah, I think that's important. That's an important thing to note, because I think most of us pretend, since my child is able differently, maybe they cannot be able to understand when you're talking to them.
No, they
I think
understand.
that is a myth that is out there.
No, once you realize that it's not that they don't hear or they don't understand, they take time. They take time. Yeah, and I think if you persevere long enough, they will understand what you want from them.
So you have to be consistent.
You have to be consistent, and actually it's consistency.
Yeah. So allow me to take you back a little bit. When you were talking about the behavior analysis, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So if you can just give us a scenario of maybe a child, of a child that you use the behavior analysis on, and the process that you undertook.
So in the behavior analysis, there's this model, the ABC model. So ABC is antecedent. So antecedent is whereby you observe before this child experienced maybe an emotional breakdown. What happened, for example? We give a very small but real life example. So maybe the child's pencil they were writing, and the tip now is broken. It has come to it's very tiny. So the child starts having tantrums, having meltdowns. Like if you're not keen enough, you'll not understand that it's the pencil, that it's something that you would consider not viable to cause chaos. But then you will understand that the fact that their pencil is not in a certain way. Yeah, so through the analysis, that is the antecedent part, you determine like what happened before the behavior. Yeah, so you go to the behavior part, whereby the behavior you are writing down everything, remember? So in the behavior part, you will include how was the response of the pencil not? Maybe they stood, they went to get another pencil. Maybe they stood, they took a pencil from their learner, from their desk mate. Yeah. So and the consequence is, number one, what did you do as a teacher? Maybe I can give them 2 pencils. Maybe I can give them a sharpener, like their own sharpener. Yeah, so you can also teach them to express themselves rather than just stand. You teach, next time you just lift your hand and I'll help you with it. So from there you are tracking the duration, like you are also looking at the duration. Like after this pencil broke, after how long did they start having the meltdown? Yes. So that is, in essence, that is the behavior analysis. Yeah, so that's just a tool to analyze. So with time, you will now refer to the previous session that you had. For example, you told them, when your pencil breaks, lift your hand. Did they lift their hand? And you would be surprised that they do. With time, you go and ukipunguza.
Okay.
Yes.
So the timeline. The
time, like you have to understand gradually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that maybe you might be facing with these learners in terms of, yes, they're in class, you can give us some scenarios where they did something that maybe even shocked you. You know, you said you gained interest when you're in the field. So maybe you can give us some of the scenarios that you've faced with these learners, either good or bad. Is it rewarding, the work? Are there challenges that make you feel, I need to do more?
Well, in most cases, it's challenging. It's very challenging because imagine you being you or me being me. I have to tell you something, like today I told you don't stand. Tomorrow you stand again. Like the next day, like
It can be frustrating.
It can be frustrating, but then you realize you have to be persistent. Like you don't have the option of saying that now that haujasikia, so
niachane tu na wewe. You have to be consistent,
you have to be consistent
and patient.
Actually not patient but firm. You have to be very firm. Like, I told you not to stand, I will not put up with this again. But you do it in a way that they feel, yes, I've not done the right thing, but I am not being put down.
Okay.
Yet you have to maintain, what do I say, love. Like in your voice there has to be love in as much as you are firm. It's not like, there's a way you can tell someone off and then they'll know
They'll have a negative attitude.
I'm not wanted. But still, like, I think what keeps me going is the aspect of, it's just love, nothing else. You have to love the kids, you have to love what you're doing, and just do it as if, just do it.
But I know it requires that it's not easy. And what are some of the rewarding
So,
bit of it?
The reward comes in, like, you find that the parents are, you will find that a parent will be like, I'm very grateful my child has improved in that. For example, you'll hear a parent will tell you, we can now go to church. We can now go to church and they can settle down. So you'll find that still a parent will tell you, now my child can read, my child can write. So you find that it's very, very rewarding knowing that the parent or the child is also seeing the results of your consistency. In as much as a teacher you might not notice, your work actually with time, it comes on and starts bearing fruits. It might be tiny, but it's there. The improvement is there.
And that is what you want. That's the aim.
Yes, that is the goal.
I think it's one step at a time with these kids. Yeah, I know it's not easy. And when you're handling these children, what advice can you give the parents in terms of, yes, you are doing whatever it takes for this child in the classroom. What are there extended activities that you give these children? Should the parent be involved?
So, in special needs, in any child's life, I think learning does not stop in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
So even at home, there are things parents can help in helping, like, learners with ADHD. For example, I know it's harsh, but for example, you put them in stressful situation intentionally. Like, purposely you put them in a situation whereby it must trigger their stress. So you will find that you are putting them in a stressful situation, but in a controlled environment.
Okay.
You get, like, in a safe environment whereby you use it as an opportunity to teach self-regulation. You get, yeah. So doing it at home, so it helps the parents and the learners to be aware of their reaction to situations. So you'll find that a parent, for example, in the kitchen, there's hot water, there's hot everything, there's electricity. So a parent will be, for example, you can let the learner go to the kitchen and prepare, for example, an egg. You let them do it, but you are letting them do it when you are observing them, and you are guiding them step at a time, a step at a time. So you expose them to scenarios whereby you are also monitoring.
So it's like preparing for the worst by creating it.
Yes,
the worst.
in essence.
And then now